So it's 7:31, so I'll start. First of all, before presenting anyone or any organization, I just want to say that if you could please turn your microphone off for these things to not happen, that would help. And we are here to interact and ask questions, and we really want to share and learn from our two presenters. Therefore, there's three ways you can ask questions. You can write in the chat that you have a question that you'd like to speak, or you could ask your question in the chat if you don't want to speak, and I'll make sure to read it. And the third option is if you're a little bit more familiar with computers, you can raise your hand on Zoom, and I'll make sure to let you have your question asked. We're a lot of people, so we might not have the time to answer all of the questions, but we would be pleased to have them so we can ask them in our Facebook group or forum later on. Without further ado, I'll present myself. My name is Daphne. I'm on the board of the Draft Animal Power Network. For those of you who don't know the mission of our nonprofit, the mission is to provide connection to resources that preserve and advance the use of draft animals in the making of landscapes. Therefore, we are here tonight to speak about logging with horse-powered or oxen-powered. And we have here with us John Plowden and Tom Jenkins. And without further ado, I'll let them introduce themselves because they'll do it way better than I will. We can start with you, John.
Hi. So I'm John Plowden. I've been working in the woods with horses. I've been working on building buildings with timbers from the woods that the horses have harvested.
This guy went to Paul Smith's.
Done a ton of things that are sort of woods related or wood related. I've loved wood for where woods come from for a long time. The involved in cabinetry. I was always wondering, where and how this wood got to my projects, and was just very interested in how the resource was provided or harvested, whether it was done with respect, for lack of a better word. I'm now working in Maine, for my daughter's design build company, running her crew, in renovating houses and putting kitchens and bathrooms in. So I was taking a hiatus from logging. I'm not in Vermont anymore. Anyway, that's the start. That's where I'm from.
Yeah.
I've been with horses for 25 years, I guess, 30 years.
So you have a lot of experience you can share with us tonight.
I may experience. Yeah.
I'll have many questions if anyone doesn't have questions yet that pop out, so we can start a conversation on that. What about you, Tom? Why don't you tell us what you do?
All right, so I'm Tom Jenkins. If anybody didn't hear me say earlier, I'm getting over COVID, so if I keep stopping and coughing, I'm sorry about that. I've had oxen pretty much my whole life. I got my first team when I was 5, I think. I showed in 4-H as a kid at local fairs, and did a little bit of ox pulling with them too. And then I took a break for a few years when I went to forestry school and started to have a family. And then you always want your kids to have the same life you did growing up. So I got my kids oxen, and then next thing you know, I was right back into it myself again. And then I work as a consulting forester. I've been doing that about 25 years now. My main bread and butter is selling timber to machine loggers. but I noticed more and more that I would get clients telling me that they didn't care about making money off their trees. They only wanted to have a good, healthy forest. And so then I started kind of combining my hobby and my work and doing small logging jobs with my oxen. And I've been doing that almost all winter long now for, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 15 years, probably 12 years, something like that. Um, so so I guess that's me. I'm the token ox logger. Not a lot of guys do it with oxen, but when I was a little kid, my grandfather bought me oxen, so that's what I use. If he had got me a team of horses, then I'd be here with horses.
Well, that was one of my first questions. Did you have any mentors? I'll start with you, Tom. Did you have any mentors growing up to teach you or to help you with your business when you started?
Absolutely. 4-H was a great program for me.
Right.
We had a little club with probably 8 or 9 kids from my town or surrounding towns, and we had a 4-H leader who was an old ox logger from way back in the days when that's just how you did it, and he was really great. Taught us all how to drive oxen and taught us how to make yokes and how to hook onto things, and he was a really valuable resource when I was a little kid. And also my grandfather taught me. He had oxen. He used to tell me I was the 7th generation in my family to have oxen on the same farm.
Wow.
So I had a lot of help and resources there. And then later on, as I started to think, geez, I might quit my real job and try and work for myself and make oxen logging part of that, then of course DAPChat was a huge help. That was back in the days when there was a forum and there wasn't Facebook wasn't as prevalent. And the DAPChat forum was a place where we could go and I could talk to experts. I could have a conversation with John Plowden and Carl Russell and Brad and Derek from Third Branch Horse Logging, and those guys were really, really helpful. Mitch Earl from up in Maine, he used to call himself Mitch Maine on DAPChat, and Jim Ostergaard. Those guys were just really, really awesome. I don't think I could ever have made it as far as I have without their help.
Right. And so you met them, did you meet them at the field days as well, or?
Yep, I did meet, I think I've got to meet all those guys at different DAPChat events. Mitch Maine, I actually went and visited him at his farm one time. I was up in Maine and I looked him up and I knew we weren't too far away. So I went and found him in person because I had a lot of great conversations with him over the computer and was just really wanted to meet him in person. So I tracked him down and found him. But
for those who don't know, our organization holds field days every year in the fall, and it's a very nice place to meet mentors and professionals that use horses and oxen in the wood. And John, did you have any mentors that like helped you start your business, or friends, or well, your microphone is off, so we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? All right, cool. Yeah, I had many of the same people that Tom had mentioned. I hung out with and worked with, and we sort of mentored each other. Where they had knowledge and they had horses and skills, and we were learning to learn together and made a few mistakes together too, I think. But yeah, Jim and Brad and Derek, younger, but still mentors. It was people that had brought different aspects to the same work.
Right.
Made things flow very well.
Yeah, because it doesn't necessarily, age is not dependent on knowledge, right?
Right. It's not.
We have our first question from Matt Garnery. I tried. I'm sorry, my English isn't so good. So how many days would you estimate do you spend logging per year? Are you logging year round or primarily in the winter? We'll start with you, John, because you have your mic open.
Well, year round, I feel personally that the woods needs a time to rest or to give birth in a sense. So I think the spring is a time that I tend to be more careful in the woods or try to avoid logging. It's also wetter. Do a lot more ground damage in the spring. Winter's super. I mean, if the snow is not 4 feet deep, nobody enjoys shoveling out stumps, but so you can cut or slogging through the snow, breaking trail. Summer's great. Flies are out. That's something to consider. Fall is really nice too. It's starting to cool off. All seasons. And when I was working with Third Branch, we were working every day. Every day we could be in the woods. We would work. Rainy days we'd take off. Sometimes we'd take a personal day, but pretty much 200 180 200 days.
Yep. Yeah. And what about you, Tom?
For me, I only log in the wintertime, and it's just a factor of the other things I do for work. I make my own hay, and so I do a lot of hay farming type stuff in the summertime. Also, that's one difference between the horses and the oxen is the oxen really don't handle heat very well. They don't sweat like a horse does. They will sweat. They will get wet and slimy and gross to squeeze yourself in between, but they don't sweat as well as a horse does, and so I can't get a lot of work out of them. I start if it's above 80 degrees, they just kind of melt on you and move real slow. So I give them the summer off and I do other things. I mark timber for machine loggers. I write a lot of forest management plans. I make my own hay. So logging is really just a wintertime activity for me.
Okay, which leads me to another question. We've had, would you say that logging is your primary source of income? And if not, has it been, or is it a goal to make it the primary? We'll start with you, Tom.
It's not my primary source. I mean, timber is absolutely my primary source if you can kind of look at that as a whole. But I make a lot more money selling timber to machine loggers. I go out, I mark the trees, tally the volume, do property boundaries, flag out skid roads, file all the permits, and then sell it by competitive bid to machine loggers. And I charge commission for doing that. And I make so much more doing that the logging with the oxen just really can't compare. So we've had this discussion a bunch of how you make money logging with animals, and really you have to maintain the standard of living that you're used to. And so I kind of feel like if I was just a single guy and it was only me, I could live in a small little cabin and I could make my living logging with my oxen. But reality is, I have a wife and 3 kids, and I have a daughter who's studying abroad in Italy right now, and another one who's applying to Ivy League schools. So I have to pay those bills. You gotta be realistic about it.
Right. And you, John, what are
I have made money and I have lost money horse logging.
interesting?
The best money I made, I think, horse logging was with Derek and Brad with Third Branch. That was a different approach, but we were making money. I wouldn't, supporting a family was very difficult, and I augmented with other things, carpentry and snow plowing, and I did make hay, sold some of that sometimes. We raised our own animals, so that helped with keeping costs down. Yes, you can, as Tom put it, if he was single in a cabin, you could live in a cabin and be good. I think with the approach that Third Branch was using, it was more of a service. based business. We were providing a service, basically leaving the woods in better condition than they would have been if it had been maybe conventionally logged, or that they wanted us to our approach to keep their forest for the next generation and the next generation. And that was very valuable to them. So our services were valuable, and they paid us for our services because we fit their goals.
All right. So here's another question is, what are the services you offer in terms of, like, speaking from someone who doesn't log, who doesn't know what a service is, what you do in the forest, how do you do it? What are your stumps? What are, like, how do you make money? Do you sell the wood and take a percentage, or are you hourly paid?
Yes.
Or are you offering a contract and you say,
Well,
that's how
it's
you
broken
spend
down many ways. It's broken down many ways. There's many different ways it can be broken down. It's probably too long an explanation for the Zoom chat here. Maybe for the typing on Instagram or not on Instagram, but a Messenger. We're saving that. But the folks wanted, we would not buy stumpage. We would charge a per thousand rate to harvest their product and market it, and they would get paid a certain rate per thousand for their product, not like stumpage, which is where you're buying the trees standing.
Yeah. And
so machinery, you can't compete with machinery, right?
No.
So if I go to sell a wood lot, say I mark 400,000 board feet on a wood lot, and I'm going to sell it to the highest bidder, somebody with horses or oxen, I don't care if they had 100 of them, you could not compete with the machinery on that job, right? You can't play the same game that the machines play and think that you're going to compete. You won't be in business very long at all. Those guys are designed to pump out a large volume of timber as fast as they can, very cheaply, and then they pass that extra money back to the landowner. So machine logger might pay $50,000 up front for a wood lot, and then go out there and cut all that timber off there in the span of 3 or 4 weeks, and then move on to the next one. Often they're doing 2 or 3 jobs before they even have all of the receipts in their hand from the first one they did.
Yes.
So, that's different. We can't, if you're thinking about being a horse logger or an ox logger, you can't compete with them. It's apples and oranges. It's a totally different process.
Yeah.
So I think, as Carl Russell used to say all the time, the product we're producing is not the logs on the landing. It's the wood lot that you're leaving behind when you're done.
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. Another question I had, but for everyone now, just so we have a sense of we're talking to, do you think you could either raise your hand or write in the chat if you have, like, if you're making a living in the forest with animals already, or if you have a business and it's probably not your first source of income, or it is, but we're just curious to know. So you can go ahead, raise your hand, or write in the chat. And another side question there is in the chat already is, what breed of oxen do you have? And do you advise for logging?
So I have a mixed team right now. I have a Ashir and I have a Holstein. They're a mix of different teams that have been combining them and switching them around. And I had a 14-year-old ox who was just a really great ox. He would pull the whole state if I could hook him to it. And he died unexpectedly on me. So I'm taking the partner I had with him and switched in another one that I got. And so slowly right now I'm working them into shape and trying to figure things out. So lately working has felt more like on the job training than anything else. But you know, we're getting there, small steps. You just have to be patient. um, I prefer a cross. If I had a choice, I prefer a cross between a beef breed and a dairy breed. The dairy breeds tend to be a little more active. They're a little smarter, you know, more energy. The beef breeds are stouter and maybe stronger. So when you make a cross, hopefully you're getting the best of both. Hereford Holstein make excellent oxen, or Holstein Shorthorns. The last team I had for 14 years was Holstein Shorthorns, and I was pretty keen on them.
Right. Well, that's a good. I don't know anything about any horse, any breed of of cows except from milking cows. But and so another question, but maybe I don't know if it's related to oxen because I don't know much about oxen, is the big question of shoes or no shoes in the woods. And without judgment for those who do and who don't, we just want to know what you guys' opinion. I don't know if you can, well, I know you can put shoes on oxen, but we'll start with John. What is your opinion about that?
I've
think if you're
never had
working
a
your
shod
horses-
ox. You,
Oh, well, you go ahead.
Go ahead, Tom.
I've never had a shod ox. You can shoe them. It's pretty hard to find people that know how to put them on. I'll trim my own hooves, but to think I'm going to pound a nail in their foot, I don't know. I'm not going to mess with that. The only real reason to shoe an ox is if you're working on ice. And even then, I've always managed to get away without it. They get slipping and clambering and fall down once in a while. I drive them from farther away. I'll stay 10 feet away from them, so I don't have to worry about them falling on me if they fall down.
Yeah.
But they learn how to deal with the ice, and they'll figure it out and get it done. I have carried buckets of sand in and sanded my main skid roads. I've shoveled a bunch of used manure, used bedding out of my barn into my trailer and brought it out and spread it around on my log landing. You know, you just figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you think it would work with horses, John?
Running horses in the winter on ice, definitely shod and cocked up. In the winter and in the summer when it's dry ground, you could run barefoot, and I run barefoot. I prefer to run barefoot if I could, you know, all the time, but the horses will they slip too much and they'll beat their feet up. So it's nice to put a shoe on them. But barefoot would not working for sure.
Yeah, I'm asking this question because I work my horse in the woods, no shoes, and everybody's like, "Oh, you should put shoes on your horse," and I don't see them slip at all because we don't use main skids road, and that might be one reason. Like I don't have ice much. I just work in snow.
Different condition, no ice, powdery snow. Yeah, perfect.
But I have I'm just always thinking of what is the impact on how a horse, or I'm probably sure an oxen works that way too, but how it's positioning itself in the snow and how much confidence it has to pull more wood and more effectively. I've seen my horse work way more effectively with shoes on, and now I see him, he's less confident, and I'm not sure if I should shoe him or not because I don't have farriers around. So
well,
that's a big question.
He's less confident. He's less confident without them.
A little less.
Yeah. So if you notice a difference, and put the shoes on, and maybe his confidence will improve.
But see, the problem is I'm in a place where there's no farrier available. So if I had to shoe him, I'd have to do it myself.
Yes. Do you trim?
I trim, but shoeing is the next level, and I'm wondering, have you guys do it, or do you know people who do it with the horses and they're confident? Like, is that something that's imaginable?
So when I first started with horses, I didn't know how to shoe. I didn't know how to trim feet. I had to be taught all these things. I hired the farrier to come and trim the feet, come and put the shoes on. But I'd watch and I'd help. And eventually Frank Walker was a farrier that's like, hey, I can't come out this far anymore. You're gonna have to learn to do this by yourself. So next few visits he would teach me how to nail a shoe on, shape a shoe and put it on.
Right.
Cold forging. It wasn't anything fancy,
Yeah.
And then, but I did it for years after he taught me, and I did, he'd come and check my work every once in a while, and he'd say, hey, you're doing fine. The horse never went lame. So
Right.
I learned,
Zach, do you have a question, Zach Odom, or was it from earlier answering my questions? We'll let that one. We'll let you write in the chat if ever. But we have other
I
questions.
assume he was telling you that he's a mule
Yeah,
dog.
that's what I think too. There is a question: how do you find your customer base? Of course, outside of your own woodlot. So, what are if you have any tips, tricks? Do you have cards, business cards? How do you do it? Let's start with John. Or how did you do it? Or how do you do it?
Word of mouth, business cards. One happy customer talking to another, referrals. People see horses on the side of the road. They stop and ask questions, and that's one way. The internet is another. I'm not very savvy with that. Derek's he's brilliant on the computer and very organized with that kind of stuff. And he's younger, so he's savvy he grew up with computers, unlike us older guys. But
Right.
That's the three ways. I mean, we did some advertising. I did advertising. I got a couple calls, but it wasn't worth the cost to put it in the paper or the periodical, So
Yeah. And Tom, kind of.
Yeah, so when I first got into the timber business, fresh out of college, I got a job as a procurement forester buying timber for a local sawmill. And it's a tough job. It's a really tough job. You have to eat, sleep, and breathe timber. Everybody that you ever meet, everybody you ever see, you have to think, do they have trees? Do they know somebody who does? And it takes a long time to get yourself established and get into that. I eventually shifted from being a procurement forester to being a consultant and working for landowners. And then that was still pretty tough to really find those clients. And I think it's just sort of longevity. I've been in the same spot so long that eventually word got around, people started to know me. And I don't advertise my forestry business at all. It's just word of mouth. I've had so many clients over so many years that people just call me. And then as far as the logging with the oxen goes, I think Facebook has really helped me a lot. I put lots of pictures and videos on Facebook of the oxen pulling, and people think it's neat, and I get a lot of phone calls because of that.
Right. And so you find the first years you started business, was it harder than now, or was it always like, people always wanted the services you offered? And
it was definitely harder. I had to really compete and look for those jobs. And some landowner wanted to meet me on Sunday morning, then there was no way I could say no. And now I say, nah, that's family time. If you can't take a couple hours off from work, then I probably don't want to, not interested.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same for you, John.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Right. Then I had another question about for those who are starting their businesses and building their equipment and thinking about their trailer, thinking about what they need, and in the woods, what are your essential tools that you bring with you in the woods, and what are the tools you used to bring that you're no longer bringing because you think what a waste of weight or time or
I
whatever?
don't need it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can start, John.
Sorry. Well, I would recommend that you have a suitable vehicle and trailer combination that's safe and works. And it's difficult. They're expensive, but I started with I towed around a steel trailer that was rusting through on the sides, and I got it for free. Or no, I paid a couple $100 for it and fixed it up and ran that for a while. Eventually moved up to bigger and better trailers. But you know, you got to get your horses there safely, or your oxen, your mules, whatever you're using.
Yeah.
And then you need your rigging, what you're going to use to haul your trees out if you're working in the woods. And you're going to need your saw, your PPE and all that stuff, chains, PVs. It'd be really nice if you had a cart or an arch, and the need comes along. When I started out, I didn't have anything. I had a horse. I had a Pioneer cart, which wasn't really good in the woods. Found out pretty quickly that it didn't work for what I was doing. So I was like, oh, well, I'm handy with a welder. I've got steel. I can go to the scrap yard and I can put cob things together, So I built my first arch. I think Scott Stevens, if he's still on the chat here, I sold him one of my first arches way back. He's a retired game warden now. I'm up in the northern parts of Maine.
Right.
Yeah, tools. You're going to acquire lots of them, and you're going to discard other ones.
Right. I'm thinking about, are you bringing food for your animals, or do you feed them before and after too?
We were feeding grain. They get the grain in the morning and hay in the manger. They get that for a while, or while we're harnessing up, and they get each get a bag of hay tied to the trailer when we're at the work or up in the woods, so they can free munch. And then they get occasionally they get water in the woods.
All right, we'll talk about this a little later, but and Tom, what are your tools and feed and everything that you need to bring?
Yeah, so I started off with really minimal stuff and slowly worked up. It's part of the thing I really like about logging. It seems like every individual tree is an entirely different problem unto itself than the last one. How they fall, how they lay, what they look like, the spot they're in, the direction it's got to move. It's all different, and you have to have the right tool for the right job. So, I really like to use my logging arch, but sometimes that's just not great. And so I call it a Go Devil instead. Just two skis with a bunk on it that I put under the leading edge of the log. Sometimes you want to just throw a chain around it and drag it on the ground for a little ways. So you want to have ample chains with you. When I first started, I only had one chainsaw. And so I used to carry around an extra bar and chain with me in case I got pinched. I could take it off and leave it in the tree and put it back on and cut it out. So, now I've got a whole collection of saws. I don't even worry about bringing an extra chain with me. I just throw that one in the trailer and grab another one.
Yeah.
But, it's really nice to have two of everything too. Like I leave a chainsaw on my landing and then leave one in the woods. So I can fell trees, drag it out, and grab my other saw and buck it up on the landing. Same as PVs PV's a really valuable tool. And so I'll keep one out in the woods where I'm working and then one out in the landing.
All my arches come with a PV holder, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, two. I mean, having two everything is pretty handy, just so when something breaks, you don't have to take the day off to go fix it.
Right.
Spare horse harness parts too.
Mhm.
Yeah, with the oxen, losing a bow pin, that's the little pin that holds the bow in your yoke. You lose one of those things, you're done for the day. That's $20, and it's done. You pack up and go home. So I've I've got bow pins coming to my ears now. Those things they're all over my truck, in the pocket of every coat I own, because it's just not worth losing them.
Yeah.
And you do.
In T wrenches too, the bar wrench,
Oh yeah.
those things are, you drop one in 2 feet of powder snow, all of a
Poof.
sudden that thing's worth its weight in gold.
Yep.
Yeah. Matthew Schofield has a question. He said, how much emphasis do you all put on PPE in the forest? I don't know what PPE is in the forest. I'm sorry, I'm from Quebec.
PPE is personal protective equipment.
Okay.
Okay.
I know what that
Chaps,
is.
chaps, helmet, gloves, steel-toed boots, Kevlar boots. I put a lot of emphasis on personal protective gear in the woods. Yes. First aid kit, tourniquet. And I don't work alone. But that's up to the individual. That's just, if somebody else is there, somebody's got to know where you are. Put it that way. I've been known to leave a GPS location of the landing where I'm working, so that help can get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I put a lot of emphasis on it, Matt.
Yeah, I never touch a saw without my chaps and hard hat on.
Yep.
It's pretty important. In the time that I've been a forester, I've had 2 guys killed on my logging jobs. It's no joke. It's serious stuff. And I had a few guys get very seriously injured too. And I actually broke 7 bones in my foot and spent 4 months on crutches. See, you can't mess around. I've got a beautiful family. I want to make sure that I go home to them at the end of the day. So you have to remain vigilant. You have to think about this stuff. You got to keep yourself safe.
Yeah, definitely doing it safely, Tom. I couldn't agree with you more. I
And
recommend
you,
anybody starting in the woods, starting a chainsaw, take a chainsaw class. You put on by a known organization. Game of logging is I never took it, but it's everybody. I've worked with a lot of folks that have, and it's good skills. It's not just how to put the tree where it's supposed to be. It's a lot more than that.
yeah. Tom, you work alone in the forest, in the woods?
Yeah, I'm out there alone most of the time. My wife really hates that. Pretty often landowners come out and check on me, or neighbors come out and check on me. And oftentimes somebody will see me on the landing and they'll stop and just shoot the bull. I want to see the oxen for a minute. And they'll say, geez, is there anything I can do for you? And I always say, yeah, why don't you just swing by sometime at 1 o'clock and make sure I'm still alive,
Yeah, no, seriously,
But
yeah.
I'm often joking, the last job I did was on a pretty busy road, and it was a really narrow driveway between guardrails, and it was quite difficult to get a 20-foot gooseneck trailer backed into that driveway. And people give me a hard time about working by myself. And I say, I don't know, the most dangerous part of my job was backing that truck off the road.
Yeah. Do you use CBs or radios or GPS?
I don't, but I have pretty good cell service where I'm at. It's not very often I don't have cell service here. So
Okay.
When we're working as a team in the woods, we all have radios. So
Right.
there was 3 of us up in the woods, and there was a team of horses. There was usually somebody felling, and somebody running the forwarder. So a lot going on, and you take a load of wood out on the forwarder, and you come back, and you need to be able to communicate that if somebody's dropping a tree or not, and if it's clear. So yeah, we did use radios.
Yeah. just as a notice, I log alone as well, and I don't have service where I am, so I have a CB for the landowner to the place where I am. So it's about to
Mhm.
change. Having a partner coming in soon.
Oh, congratulations.
Yay. We have a question from Michael Kuba. As far as making a living, how do you rate saw logs versus firewood versus pulpwood? A little of everything. John, you can start.
Pulp stays in the woods. Anything under 6 inches stays in the woods. Firewood's crooked wood. You don't make a lot of money with firewood at all. Saw logs is where your money is, but you're going to get firewood from your saw logs too.
So the way I've been doing it the last several years is I just charge an hourly rate to put all the wood on the header.
There you go.
And then I do the marketing too, and I sell that wood for the landowner. And then when the checks come in, I just square up with them. If there's extra, I give it to them. And if there's a deficit, then I give them a bill. I don't mess around with firewood. I dice it up and leave it laying in the woods. Just because I feel like it would cost the landowner way too much money to have me drag that out.
Yep.
If they want it and they're willing to pay me to do it, then I have no problem dragging it for them. But, I'm always trying to be really honest with those landowners right up front that, hey, this is going to cost you money, and then let them make the decision on it.
Yeah. We do the
Where
same.
I'm at, we have, very poor pulp markets. Even the guys that can produce 100 cords a day are barely breaking even on it. So what chance do I have? None.
Zero. It takes the same amount of work too to get it out. Right.
And so where are you guys at? Well, we know, John, you're in Maine.
I'm in Western Massachusetts.
Okay, so that helps everybody. Because I know we have some Quebec folks. It's way different. We don't bid on lands. We don't. It's a whole different system. We just sign contracts without bidding necessarily. We just have a prescription, and it's just different. And pulpwood is not really bad. I mean, you can make money if you do the whole process, but selling it, if you work animals, I don't think it's worth it. But if you cut it and like ship it to people, like, and sell it, do the whole thing, then maybe you can make a little bit of money. But yeah. And we're all here because this DAPChat was called story telling stories. Well, it was called stories from loggers. And so I wondered if you had a story you wanted to share about, I don't know, something important that made you change your way of doing in the woods, or someone you met, or an event that was really stressful, or that's something you'd like to share with us that changed your perspective or your life about logging with animals. John, if you have any idea.
So many experiences, so many stories to tell.
You can tell many, and that's the reason
I think I is sharing the stories that I've had, with folks that I've been working in the woods with, or students, sharing with students. And I think what I'm really, fascinated by or enjoying is that, I've spent a lot of time in the woods working with horses, and a lot of folks have come and asked questions, and how do I do this, or what am I doing, or can you help me with this? And I think that sort of network of folks, maybe like DAPNet or MOFGA and all these places, has been a great place to share these experiences. And I think this the teaching folks with animals that I love, and letting people use the animals that I've taught or trained to learn something, how to drive, how to pull a log, how to hitch to a piece of equipment, how to back a trailer up. These are experiences that aren't related to logging necessarily, but that are related to logging because I've met these folks through logging or through my skills in teaching folks or sharing and mentoring. I think that's what that's my experience in a sense.
Yeah. A lot of wisdom from other people too. Like
Yes.
that. Yeah. That's what I hear.
Watching people's different approaches. I remember when I was starting out with horses, I picked up a team of old sleigh horses, and it was Duke and Tuck. And Tuck was a former pulling horse. I found out really quickly when I was backing him up and the chains were jingling and I was hitching him to a log for the first time. And it was basically the first time for me working with horses too. I was really green at this point, but I was gaining confidence. So I figured I'd take these two out and hitch them to a log and see how it goes. And Duke was just he was a plug, but he was a beautiful horse, wonderful white, old Belgian. And he was just a neat old steady horse. And Tuck was I got attitude horse, and he's a little jumping. I was backing the two of them up on loose rigging. I still have an evener with a hook in it, and I've got a chain, and I'm backing them up. And the minute that chain hit the hook, that Tuck horse, he decided he was going to just take it, because he's a former pulling horse. So I didn't know the horses as well as I should have probably. I was, just starting out, but man, I've had that horse for a long time, and he turned out he had foundered in the past, and his soul was dropping, so he got more and more lame, and we had to put him down. Kept old Duke, and then I got another horse, can't remember his name, and I got more and more. So,
you've got years of experience when you don't remember the names of your horses.
Yeah.
That says a
Good
lot.
ones, Annie and but I remember Bubba. Bubba was another horse we had. He was a rescue. I got him on my way to the DAPChat in Tunbridge. I picked this horse up in the trailer, and from a woman in Western Mass, and sight unseen, I drove my trailer to meet them. I can't remember where I met them in Mass, and they got out of the trailer with the horse, and I looked at the horse and looked at his eyes, and I said, "Yeah, I'll take him." And I knew a little bit more about horses at this point, and he seemed like a good horse. But we got him to Tunbridge, and I couldn't touch his feet. He'd try to kick you or bite you. And Neil Perry did some rope work with him, which was pretty cool. And Heidi Meyer was a barefoot trimmer. We did a demonstration with him. Turned into an all-day event with his feet. Just these different. The animals are different, and it's But he was he had the biggest heart. He would, if you wanted something done, you asked him, you just get on it, Bubba, and he would get on it, and he would pull it out of there for you. He was coming up out of a hill, he'd go down on his knees, get back up, and keep going. He's just, I'm not stopping. But you could control him, but nobody else could touch him. He was just a very different animal. Had a very interesting personality. He was scary, honestly, but I kept him. And, Rich Lee had him for a while. He was running a CSA up in Jefferson, I think, in Maine. I sold him to Rich with a bunch of equipment, and Rich could handle him, and he kept him. He was the only person I thought could. So anyway.
Some of the warm-blooded horses are sometimes really good partners, even though they can be scary at times.
Yeah, they can.
Tom, did you have a story that you thought about that you wanted to share?
Sure. I forget just exactly how you phrased your question, but it reminded me of this one day that started off pretty frustrating and angering, and then ended just perfect. So I got hired to do this job by a local town's conservation commission, and they wanted to build a little shelter beside a beaver pond that they could connect to hiking trails, and so people could go out there and sit in this little shelter and watch the ducks and beavers and whatever else. And so they said they had a whole bunch of black locusts on the property, and they wanted to use the locust because it would be rot resistant. And then they found this timber framer who would give them a reduced rate to build this really cool timber frame structure for them. And so then, they would essentially ask me if I would work for half price to cut and pull these trees. And I thought it was good publicity, so I agreed to it. And so I go and I meet that timber framer out there, and we go to pick trees. And once you know it, there's not a locust on that whole damn property. There was, however, plenty of black walnut. Really nice black walnut, which that I never see black walnut. It doesn't grow native near me. It'll grow if you plant it in your yard, but it's not a natural tree. So for these walnut to be there, somebody must have planted them, 80 years before. And so we walked that property, looked at every tree there, couldn't come up with anything that was better. And so it was decided that we're building a goddamn duck blind out of black walnuts. So, so anyway, there's two of them that were, really big trees, and there was a pretty big cherry tree that had uprooted and was leaned into these other two. And so we decided, well, I should take the cherry in those two black walnuts, and that'll be most of the wood we need for this little structure. And we thought the cherry mixed in with the walnut would look really cool in the building, and so that's what we did. So anyhow, I cut one of the walnuts, it came down, no problem, got it pulled out. And then I'm looking at the next one. It's got this huge cherry tree hung up in it. There's dead limbs everywhere. So I cut the cherry tree off the stump, and it essentially didn't move. It just stayed there. So then I go to cut the walnut with the giant cherry hanging in it. And I'm looking up, and I can see all these dead branches. And I know they're coming down once this tree starts to go. So I did my notch, I bored it, I back cut, left a little bit of hinge wood, and then I just barely nip it and then just take off running as fast as I can. And I hear the thud of one of those branches hit the ground right behind me as I'm running away. And then the whole damn mess comes down, crashed right where I wanted it. Everything was fine. But I'm turning around, my heart is still just pounding like crazy. And as I turn around, here comes some guy through the woods. And the part I left off is this is pretty close to the edge of a pretty busy road. So everybody in the world that drives by, probably a couple hundred cars an hour, can see my oxen standing out there on the side of the road. So people keep pulling over and watching. And so anyway, my heart's pounding like crazy from outrunning this widowmaker. I turn around, here comes some guy marching up to me and starts pointing his finger at me, screaming at me how I'm destroying the world and killing trees and ruining wildlife habitat and all of this crazy stuff. And so I just kind of pointed my finger back at him and start giving him an old what for, how I just almost got killed cutting that tree. And the last thing I was going to do was listen to his BS. And his eyes all of a sudden get as big as saucers, and he just turns around and literally runs. And I thought to myself, like, wow, I didn't know I was such a big, scary guy. And then I realized I actually had my axe in my hand. So so that was pretty funny.
Yep.
So he left. I got the rest of those trees out of the woods, got them all stacked up on the landing. I was all set to take my yoke off and load up. And this really small little old man, he was probably 5 feet tall, but he was bent over to 3 feet tall, and his back was bent so bad he was looking at the ground and had a little cane. And he came over and was talking to me about the oxen, said he'd love to watch me pull a log. And instead of saying I'm all done, I just said, oh, I got one small top over there, go get for you. So I went and made one last hitch out of some firewood and pulled it out. And he started telling me these stories about when his father was a Polish immigrant, and they rented a half an acre of field, which they planted crops in. and his father had a big Belgium draft horse that he contracted out to do different jobs, but they also used it on their half-acre land for cultivating. And so he said he would have to lead that horse while his father held the handles of the cultivator. And he said he remembers walking down the rows of vegetables holding that horse and just hearing and the thud, thud, thud of those giant hooves hitting the ground next to him. And he said he could feel the ground shake under his feet when they were stepping so close to him. And it was a really cool story to hear him tell me all that stuff. And then finally, when he was getting ready to leave, he reaches out and he sticks a $5 bill in my shirt pocket. And he goes, "That's for those animals' feed tonight." And I said, I don't need your $5 really. And I tried to give it back to him, and he shook his cane at me, and he was like, "You just try and give that back." so I thanked him, and that was the end of the day. But I met a real asshole first thing in the morning that just sort of ruined my day, and then I met like a really awesome guy in the afternoon that made it all worth it. So sometimes that's the way it goes.
Right on.
Yeah.
And the most valuable logs I've ever pulled in my life are the flooring and a duck blind.
Oh,
Well, that's also another question. Like, there is really good days and there are really, really bad days in the woods. And what keeps you from doing it over and over when you have really, 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 really bad days? And like, do you have a story to make us see what it is to have a bad day in the woods? Like, I don't know, it could be small or it could be big, but I mean, the other day I broke my hook to put my chain on my whipple tree, and I thought my day was over. Turned out I found a new way to do this, but it was a really bad day for other reasons, and I have my personal motivation, but we want to know what your motivation is so that when these bad things happen to us, we know what to do. So is it inside of, like, is it personal or is it outside? Do you do it for horses, or what keeps you going on in the day?
I personally love being in the woods.
Yeah.
That keeps me going. You break something, you try to fix it, make do, or use a spare. I remember I had a job over in Bartlett, New Hampshire, and I was living in Stowe, Maine, it's across the hill. It's about an hour drive with a horse trailer, and it was up the top of this hill. Well, no, it was, yeah. Anyway, and I got to this job, and they had made an ice bridge across the river, and we were going to just haul out for a house lot. So I brought the team, and I had Annie, who was a mare I had. It was a really nice horse, and I think I had I can't remember the other horse. I had another horse with me as a team, and I got to the job, and I don't ship my horses with harnesses on, so I get to the job and I harness them at the landing. So I keep the harnesses in the barn, or I had them in the barn. Must have been a Monday or something. Anyway, so I had it all loaded in the truck and trailer. Got to the job and realized that I didn't bring the bridle for her. So I'm an hour away, and I have the horses, and I'm going to truck back. So I called my wife, and she was going to come with the bridle from the barn. But I still had to get to work, and I was looking around, and I found a riding bridle. So it was blinderless, but it fit her. It was her riding bridle. So what the heck? Let's take this horse who's never been in open, take her out in the team without the blinders. Let's give the girl a go, So put it on, hitched them, put the lines together, backed them up, and off we went. And she was not really happy about it. She was aware of everything going on because she'd never seen it. her view was like, it was opened up. And so it was difficult. So we just started to work through it, slow down, work the horse a little bit, just be confident, head on in there as if it's normal. And sure than shit, that horse, she settled in, and we had this wonderful day hauling crappy oak logs across this ice bridge to the landing. And it was, she learned out of necessity. We learned actually that you can work without him. And I guess that was a pretty cool experience.
I like that story a lot because when I got my horse, when I bought my horse, I couldn't afford a bridle with blinders, and I only had my riding bridle.
Yeah.
And I've never switched since then. He still has a riding bridle, and for my horse, he's an old guy. He's got hip problems and feet problems.
Yeah.
And I find that it really, really helps him backing up in the woods and making like knowing what's around him. And he sees everything when he backs up. So he backs up way better than with blinders. So that taught me one thing.
I did. I run horses open. I mean, I do it. It's fun, the old fire horses, city fire horses, the ones that hauled the fire trucks and fire engines in America, didn't wear blinders.
There you go. So
I think it was so they could be aware where they were going or what was around them. But maybe it made them go faster too. I don't know.
maybe. And Tom, how do you deal with horrible bad days? Or
Well, I'm kind of a John in that I just like being in the woods. It sort of makes me a little calmer. But I've had a lot of days where everything breaks. I've one time in one day I broke the wheel off my logging arch, unhooked it, pushed it aside, hooked my team directly to that tree with a chain, and pulled it about 30 feet and snapped my yoke in half. Maybe I should have learned the first time that tree was too damn big, but at least I proved my bulls can pull.
Yeah.
yeah.
I learned through the oxen and working with oxen, I've learned that I have that redhead temper, where I'm really easygoing. It takes a while to get me pissed, but once I'm angry, boy, it's an atomic bomb. And so I've learned with the oxen that nothing good happens when I lose my temper. I just have to stay calm and figure out how to not freak out, or else I'm done and nothing can work. So I just I look up at the trees, I look up at the blue sky, I look over at the snow, take some deep breaths. I touch and pet my animals a lot more than most people that I know who have either working oxen or horses. I'm always touching them, scratching their chin, scratching behind their ear, petting them, talking to them. That stuff helps keep me calm down and relaxed. And that ability that I've gained in controlling my temper through working with the oxen has worked out really well for me as I got a little older and started having kids. Apply some of those same techniques is pretty handy.
Yeah.
Right there with you on that, Tom.
But also I do a lot of different things. I might be logging today and out marking timber tomorrow and writing a forest management plan the next day. And then maybe I'll take a couple of days off and go help a friend with some sugaring. So, if everything's really bad, if the weather's bad, if ground conditions are bad, I just go do something else.
Yeah. Because I mean, there are frustrating things, especially when you start. Like I'm starting right now. This is my second winter, and everything seems to break, and everything seems to not work. And like one day out of two is a mess. I still make money, and I'm still, but sometimes I go back home. I'm alone in the woods. I'm alone at home. I have chores to do. I go back. My trailer doesn't properly close, so I have to use straps to close it. And then I my horse is always sick because he's old. So I go home, I have to take care of my horse, and then I arrive at home and I try to take care of myself and I just want to cry and I have to start over tomorrow. So
And
in those,
why do you start again tomorrow?
because sometimes there's many reasons, but one reason is I've come that far and I've worked so hard. I'm a city girl. I come from Paris. So running a saw is, I've never run a saw before. I had never run a saw before. Like 5 years ago was my first time. And I've really worked really, really hard. Like it's not one bad day that's gonna, stop me from doing it all over tomorrow. And also because I think a lot of people believe in my project, so that helps too. But yeah, what do you do when you go home and you just want to cry? What are your thoughts? I know you're here standing and like talking to us and it's been 20 or 15 years you started. But if you try to remember the first time, the first mistakes, the mistakes that you're like, well, that was so stupid of me of doing that. How did you how did you go over that?
I say it gets easier with experience. Those things that are causing you all the trouble now, in 10 years, that'll be nothing. There'll be a blip on the screen. You don't even think about that.
You
It's not a
won't.
problem anymore. You just move past that and move on. And you get so much better as you go. That's just keep on keeping on and it'll get better for you.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Every day's new experience, puts it in the tool belt kind of thing.
Right. On another completely, well, not completely other, but so when you accept and choose contracts, how do you choose, how do you see and how do you choose a contract? And what are your like red flags for a contract, if I can say, as to make your day easier?
You mean, what are we looking at as far as what the job entails?
Right.
So which way are we skidding the wood? How far is the wood from the landing? Are we going uphill or downhill? Is it fir? Is it veneer maple or red oak or fire? There's so many factors like that.
Mhm.
Tom?
Yeah, a downhill skid is almost a must. A lot of the jobs I look at are uphill skid. If it's too steep uphill, that's just cross that off the list and don't consider it. You can't produce on that. Unless you have some sort of machine so that you can pull downhill to a hot yard and then use the machine to pull them back up. And the other thing that I bump into a lot is the size of my landing. I have to have room to get my truck off the road with the trailer and then stack up a load of logs. And so a lot of times you have a really small log landing or there's a roadside ditch and you got to put a culvert in it and a couple loads of gravel and that's all expense. So you have to be prepared for that and you have to tell that landowner ahead of time that that's what's going to happen and what's going to be required. That's not something that you want to sign a contract on and then realize afterwards, oh shit, I can't get these logs on a truck.
Yeah, and you're responsible to put the culvert in or what have you.
Right.
Yeah.
What about soil? My mentor always told me to bring a stick with me when I visit a contract. Always bring a stick and watch how deep it goes and where can I skid and where can I not skid. I have a horse that won't go in, like, will do horrible in mud. So what do you think about that? Is that a huge
Soil's definitely plays a role. I mean, my feet, I've walked so much in the woods, my feet know what the soil feels like. I don't know if it makes any sense, but I know where the way I'm stepping, what's underneath my feet. If it's wet or if there's moisture or if it's dust, dry. But yes, soil disruption is a major factor, and you want to minimize that.
Yeah, where I am in Western Mass, we haven't had very much cold weather. We finally got just a couple of days of single digits overnight that put a few inches of frost in the ground, and then it warmed up to 40 degrees and rained for 2 days. And I haven't been out in the woods all week, but I'm sure my skid roads are a muddy mess right now.
Yeah, it's
Right.
wet.
It's been difficult. It's really tough to rely on the weather. It's a hard year. I'm gonna try and get out there Tuesday and Wednesday and skid some in the morning because I have a bunch of trees down. But this particular job I'm on, the landowner cross country skis and hikes every single day in the summer, and they're extremely worried about their trails, and I cannot damage those trails.
Right.
So I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. I think I have 45 or 50 logs stacked up along trails right now that I can't bring all the way to the landing. I might end up having to leave those until June and go back. Because I think that's about what it's going to take. I just have my fingers crossed we get a couple of more good cold nights and we can get the rest of those logs across the wet spots. But it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's the season, the climate is changing, and the weather patterns have changed, and New England, both Vermont and Western Maine, have become wetter in the winter, not as white. So it affects whether or not you can get in the woods. And there were weeks last summer that we did not log, just because it was too wet.
Yeah. We have the same issue right now. We only have like I don't think it feels below freezing, but it's not below freezing here. But we have a lot of snow. So for me, it's perfect conditions because it's not too cold and I have a lot of snow. Well, not a lot, just enough snow. But still, everything's downhill. So if I make a list of like the criterias we're trying to, build up for people who are listening and are like, oh, I have contracts coming. We want to make sure we have downhill skids.
Preferably, yes.
A nice area to stack logs.
Yeah, maybe established woods roads.
Right.
Very helpful. I mean, horses are great or animals work really well from a stump to a main trail where you can use a piece of machinery, motorized machinery. That was the combination we used at Third Branch, and it really made it possible for us to go considerable distance from the woods to the landing and transport it down. Because horses, it's very difficult to efficiently move large amounts of wood long distances to a landing with horses. The return trips is just as long as the going out, so it's difficult.
Would you say the smaller the skid, the better?
The shorter the skid.
All right. Okay.
You mean the smaller the load?
No. The shorter. Yeah, the
Shorter
shorter
distances. Yes.
Yeah. So that's a big factor to see.
And Tom, I don't know if you do this too, but you could hot yard. In other words, bunch to the road and then go along after and pick up on a scoot or a bobsled.
Yeah, that was the plan for my current job. I got a local guy who logs the horses to work with me, and I was hoping to keep the oxen in the brush and just bunch logs up next to the main trail, and then so I'd be skidding a couple 100 feet, and then have him skid maybe 1,000 feet with the horses, and just keep them running back and forth on the trail all day.
Yeah.
And then things kind of got turned upside down on me when I lost that ox, and I have a replacement for him, but the other thing, this job is it's got some huge oak, like really big oak, 36-inch diameter oak.
Oh.
And right now, I'm not capable of removing those trees. If I cut those, I can't pull them. So that's kind of a bummer. That was a nice luxury I had with a 5,000-pound team was they could pull anything I put them to.
Right. Yeah.
So, life goes on. Just keep figuring it out. You have to adapt and overcome.
Yeah. We're sorry for your loss. So. So adapting, knowing what your animal is capable of doing in the woods is one of the other criteria you would suggest.
Yes.
Um,
Don't
and your own ability to cut the wood. I'm speaking for
your
myself too.
your skill set. Yes. Yeah. What are you
Very
cutting?
important.
Are you cutting firewood? Are you cutting pine saw logs? Or are you cutting veneer, which is very finicky? You know, you have to know what you're doing when you're looking at veneer.
Mhm. People tell me all the time, you should really cut hardwood. It's well, people from the state tell me, yeah, I should cut hardwood more. It would make more money, but I consider myself more up to the task of softwood right now. And
Yeah.
I think that's just fair enough because I want to do this a longer time than just,
You know,
um,
that's good. Get practice, you know, gain the skills with the softwood you're in. I mean, that's
yeah.
perfect.
Mhm.
And then you're going to get better and better and better, and you're going to be able to tackle that hardwood. Absolutely.
I hope I'm talking for a few people here. We haven't heard anyone speak, but they're in the chat. That's fun. But if you have questions, you can raise your hand or even, don't hesitate.
Well, Matt's comment here: learn to love failure. I have to jokingly say, well, I'll never do that again. Yeah, I mean, that's perfect. It's, you're gonna fail sometimes for sure.
Yeah, I can share a story that happened this week. Because I like to share my beginner story to everyone because that they don't discourage me from what I'm doing, but they're harsh and like they're yeah. I have an old horse that's really sweet and nice and well behaved, and I was ready to trailer him back home, and this guy doesn't really like the trailer, but he still goes really easily. And I'm used to just leaving him not tied to anything and just, doing my thing. And I was just putting my saw back in my truck. Like he was 2 feet away from me. Well, not two, but like 10 feet away from me. And this guy turned around and started running away from me because he knew it was trailer time. And he would not stop, and I didn't have the lines. I felt stupid from moment 0 to 30 minutes into chasing him in like 4 feet of snow in fields. He didn't know where he was going, and it took 25 to 30 minutes for me to run behind my horse. And at some point he was like in the woods and stuck, and he didn't know what to do, and he turned around and was like, "Oh, you're chasing me. I didn't notice. Hi." So yeah, that was a horrible story where I thought I was gonna lose my lungs and my heart, but still went back to the trailer trying not to cuss and
Yeah.
be mad at my horse.
That brings that just brought a flashback to me about a horse that I had. I was doing a job in Bodenham with John Cullen, who was a mechanic, had a David Bradley tractor and chainsaw. He was a chainsaw instructor, but he and I were working this orchard opening. It was an established orchard with big pine trees around it, and they wanted the pines cut back because they were shading apple trees. So we went down there and we stayed in the landowner had an A-frame that they only used in the summertime. So we could stay in this A-frame cabin and the horses could stay right there. And I was like, yeah, went down and looked at it. I was like, yep, I think I could put a picket line up here. I just put a line up here and I can tether them between two trees for the night and they'll be fine with a big pile of hay in front of them and water and everything. I was like, okay, they did that. So we put them to bed that night, tied them to the line so they could move back and forth, and they had their pile really close to the cabin, probably 30 feet from the cabin. And John and I went to sleep, after a couple beers and some dinner, and got up in the morning ready to go to work. Looked out, where's the damn horse? He's gone. So this horse had gotten off the line. Obviously, I didn't do something right, and he disappeared. But there was snow on the ground, so we could track him. So we tracked this horse through the woods, out across the road, through an orchard, back and around, and we couldn't find him. We looked. We called the state police. they were looking, because we're right next to 95, the interstate. It was like over the hill. No reports of a horse being killed on the interstate. So finally, we were got a woman flagged us down and said, "Hey, your horse is down across that field in the other road eating from this rotten apple tree." So we went over there and got him and walked all the way back, and it was time to go to work. So we put the harness on and went to work. And, you know, and the other thing I learned there is that when you're heating up pork and beans in a can over a campfire, take it out of the can, because the plastic lining inside the can also melts and becomes part of your pork and beans. So don't forget to pour it into a saucepan instead of in the can. But that I saw that in the movies. I thought that was great. Maybe it was like Blazing Saddles. I think they were sitting around the fire eating pork and beans. But anyway, they were cooking on this. Yeah, that's the story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you found your horse.
Yeah.
So when I was running behind that horse, I thought, if he runs faster, if he starts cantering, I'm done.
Yeah. Or you're panicking. You're wondering, is the horse hurt, or where is he? And you're worried, and you're looking for this animal, and a lot of stuff's going through your head. Yeah.
Yeah, so my oxen learn the trails really quickly. I only have to take a load out maybe 3 or 4 times, and they know that trail really well. And so I'll often just hook them up and then get out of the way and let them go, especially if the snow's deep. And then I just walk the trail behind them, and they're always out there waiting for me at the header at the log pile. Well, one time I go walking out the end of the day, and my bulls aren't standing there. They had gone around the trailer and down the road. And so I'm like jogging after them, and I get to the end of the street, and I can see where the mark from the log they're dragging takes a right. And so I had to turn to the right and go running down the road. I'm jogging as fast as I can, and ended up I stopped and took my chaps off, hung them on somebody's mailbox, and continued sprinting down the road. And I caught them about 1.5 miles away with a substantial 12-foot ash log behind them.
Yep.
Just
Wow.
they weren't even going home either. They should have went left. I don't know what they were doing.
Yeah. Was the chain flat on the bottom of the log?
Yeah, I think I had a set of tongs on it, luckily. Otherwise, I'd have worn that chain right off.
Yeah.
I always wondered if anybody drove by and saw them just walking down the road.
By themselves.
Because they don't really run, do they, Tom?
No, they weren't out of control. They weren't running. They were just walking. But
Right.
The snow was really deep, and so I just couldn't keep up with them. Their pace was so much faster than mine. They got really far ahead of me. That was it.
Yeah, that's what happened for me in the field. So I see we're running out of time, and it's almost 9. If you had a final word for anyone, or if anyone had a final word or question for our two loggers, now would be the time. I guess people are shy today, but I know they're listening. They're answering in the chat. So, well, we thank you so much for all this knowledge, stories. I'm pretty sure everybody's really, learned something. I learned a lot, and it's giving me strength to go back into the woods. So, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah,
Yeah.
happy to be here. Happy to share. I can ramble sometimes, but yeah.
Oh, that's perfect.
I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram. So
We're allowed to follow you, or
you can follow me or message me questions.
Well, thank you so much again, and thank you, Tom, as well. And so we'll keep in touch, and thank you for the nice words.
Thank
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Goodbye.